This lecture is about cell phone and tablets. Basically, both a cell phone and a tablet are the same thing. It's just the size that makes the difference. Although with the advent of the iPhone 6 large one, it is becoming closer and closer. Some tablets are reducing in size and some cell phones are increasing. I think that's mainly because of the age of population and the ability to see the screen. Both items, both the tablet and the cell phone today, can be used as both a mobile phone as well as a remote terminal. Email, everything's possible now, all because of apps, both Android and iOS apps. That also makes the cell phone and tablet the main target to be used in some type of crime or fraud. Communication's easy. They can now communicate from any location in the world. They can hide their location. They can mask the telephone number that they're calling in from via the spoofing programs and applications. So one of the growing things that you'll be able to do a forensic on and that you'll see in your job is both the cell phone and tablet. Remember, though, that when you're talking about cellular phones and tablets, they're just a computer system that has a unique interface for a user input, such as the touchscreen, or the more modern tablets and phones, you can actually voice input data. If you're going to use a cellular phone or a tablet, especially a cellular phone, 99% of the time you have to have a cellular provider for service. This is both for the phone system as well as just the data system as a whole. There are, though, tablets or cell phones used without a specific carrier, and they only use their phone service via Wi-Fi. But we'll talk more about that later. Here's a list of the common couriers that we do see inside the United States when it comes to cellular service. T-Mobile, AT&T, Nextel, Sprint, Cingular, Verizon, US Cellular, and Alltel. One of the fastest growing areas in electronics and in sales is the cell phone. They are selling cell phones in the hundreds of millions of them a year. And they are also almost guaranteed that every 2 to 3 years, people will be replacing their cell phones with the newest model. It's become almost like a status symbol to have the newest model iPad or the newest Samsung, Note 5, Note 7. We have to remember, too, that those items are a fully functional computer at our fingertips. In fact, the modern cell phone has more computing power in that one device than all of NASA had during the 1960s when they were sending a man to the moon. The other thing cellular phones have done is that location is no longer an issue with us. We can use a computer and actually do our work from almost any location on the Earth. There's very few places that do not have cellular service, either normally or even through a satellite cellular service. You could be in the middle of Africa. I was one time in the middle of the Kauai jungle in Hawaii, and my Sprint cell phone actually had service right in the middle of the jungle. User anonymity is also made easy with the cell phone. You can actually go down and just pick up a prepaid cell phone, pay cash for it, and hopefully you've done it correctly so you're not on a camera someplace, and you're almost, well, essentially anonymous to the world. You're just a user with no name, no location. And let's stop and think about that. In the year of 2000, the first camera in a cell phone was sold, and within 2 years, and actually 1 year later, the digital and film camera business all but died off. Think about it, 10 megapixels, and in some cell phones, 30 and 40 megapixel cameras built into the phone. So now do we not only have our communication device with us wherever we're at, and our computer with all the applications that we can normally do, even down to the point of word processing or even PowerPoint. We also have a cell phone and a movie camera that's taking high-def photos. The other thing is cell phones have always also done is allowed us to have instant communication anywhere else in the world and with everybody in the world. Programs such as Facebook has now programs that allow you to immediately start taking video, high def, and broadcast that and stream it live over the internet. They have also created its own disease or syndrome, and that's the cell phone syndrome, where you have to have your cell phone on and you have to be checking your cell phone constantly, whether you're at dinner, on a date, etc. Tablets, they have all the advantages of a cell phone. The only difference is they got a lot bigger display and it's a lot easier typing. Although when you take a look at some of the larger phones like the Note 7 or the iPhone 6, the big one, they're getting to the point of being the size of a tablet. Although the largest tablet I've seen to date was 23 inches across. That's about the size of what the normal screen is today for people's home computers. Okay, since this whole class right now is about the generalities of cell phone and tablets, let's go into a little bit of the history. It was not a long time ago, well, at least to me, it wasn't a long time ago that if you want to make a phone call, you had to find one of those. A telephone booth someplace. And you're right, it would be cheap. It would cost you anywhere from a nickel to several dollars. It all depends if you were calling locally or overseas. But you had to find a cell phone or a telephone booth. And they were everywhere. The train stations, just down the street. Almost every street corner had a telephone booth someplace. And then later on, someone came up with the easy portable phones, they were called, otherwise known as radio phones. You normally found these in people who had money and inside their cars. They were also on airplanes. The difference being that early portable phone was a radio channel. And it had two channels, one for voice up and one for voice down. The difference being only 25 people could make a call at the same time within a cell site that this radio telephone connected to. And as you look down at the display in front of you, you'll see that it has 1 through 25. You would actually press what channel you want to go on because that channel would be open. The light would not be lit, and you would know, oh, I can go on that channel. Had you tried to press a channel where a light was on, it would not allow you onto the channel. So, in the 1970s, a lot of the cell phone lobbyists finally won it with the FCC, and they got this 75 megahertz window in the 800 megahertz band. And that was specifically allocated for cell phone. Finally, someone was able to educate the FCC about the potential in the industry and how they could not ignore it any longer, and they needed to open up that channel for cell phone use. A year later, in 1971, AT&T was the first company to propose what we now know as the mobile phone system to the FCC. It involved dividing the cities into cells or groups. It is the first company to do so. This one change in the world, this one item, changed the world in regards to communication. Because of that idea, you could take the same frequencies in one part of the city and utilize them in another part of the city and never interfere with each other. In the past, if you had a radio channel, such as ham radio, when you broadcast, it would go across the entire world. Now it was limited, geographically limited. Well, here he is, Dr. Martin Cooper. He invents the first personal handset for a working Motorola cell phone. The interesting part is he got his idea and his inspiration from what movie or what TV show? Think about it. You're right, Star Trek. Star Trek actually motivated him to come up with a portable communication device when he watched Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock flip open that little communication device and talk into it. As he came out with his first phone, they were a little bit expensive. When they first came out, the product itself in 1983 was about a $4,000 cost. Within 6 months, it dropped down to less than $2,000 and soon went down below the $1,000 mark. And at that point, it took off in public, and mass production now reduced the cost of producing cell phones from literally a couple of $100s into less than $50 range. During those next 25 years, cell phones were basically an analog radio on a cellular network. But all that changed in February of 2008. All cell phone networks had to switch by February 2008 to digital. This allowed a multitude of people on at the same time. Internet and all types of new digital applications could become mobile. To give you an example, a cell phone site in the past could not have more than 54 people on in any given cell at any given time. When they went to digital, that number was a 10 and 15-fold increase. In fact, just a year earlier, Steve Jobs announced the iPhone. There had been other phones that were made that had the same practicality of the iPhone, but the iPhone itself, just the marketing of it, jump-started and became the leader in all of the now coined smartphones.